You are standing in a grocery store. In one aisle, a carton of eggs. In another, a package of chicken breast. Both came from chickens. You've probably never once wondered if they came from the same kind of chicken. They didn't. Somewhere along the way, humans split one bird into two, and most people have no idea it happened. Every domestic chicken traces back to the red junglefowl, a small, shy forest bird native to Southeast Asia. In the wild, a red junglefowl hen lays somewhere between 4 and 20 eggs a year in 1 or 2 clutches. She isn't built to be a food production machine. She's built to reproduce at a modest, sustainable rate. For thousands of years after domestication, the chicken stayed one animal doing 2 jobs, what modern breeders now call a dual-purpose bird. Hens laid eggs at a modest rate, and when a bird stopped laying, well, that same chicken went into the pot. There was no meat chicken and no egg chicken. There was just chicken. Selective breeding is repeated, deliberate mate selection. Breeders pick the individual birds that show the most of a trait they want. A chicken's short generation time made it an unusually fast subject for this kind of selection. By the 1920s, poultry shows were rewarding farmers who could get hens to lay far beyond the ancestral rate. One breed, the Australorp, reportedly laid 364 eggs in 365 days during an Australian trial. Word spread. Farmers realized laying performance wasn't fixed by nature. It was a trait you could breed for, the same way you could breed a dog for speed. Meat quality and growth speed have almost nothing in common with egg-laying ability as breeding traits. That shift came at a cost: the slow disappearance of the dual-purpose bird itself, surviving mainly in backyard flocks and heritage breed conservation programs. In 1945, the grocery chain A&P partnered with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to launch something called the Chicken of Tomorrow contest. Farmers across dozens of states entered regional heats through 1946 and 1947. 40 finalists made it to the national round, where their eggs were shipped to a University of Delaware research farm and hatched under identical, tightly controlled conditions. Same feed, same housing, same 12-week timeline. On June 24, 1948, in front of a crowd in Georgetown, Delaware, the winner was announced, complete with a parade and a Festival Broiler Queen riding on a float. Charles Vantris had crossed red Cornish males with New Hampshire red females and produced a hybrid with dramatically better breast meat yield and faster growth. A second-place finisher, a teenager named Henry Saglio, had refined a pure line of white Plymouth Rocks. Both of them would go on to found the hatchery companies that essentially invented the modern broiler industry. By 1959, Vantris-derived hybrids were the sires of roughly 60% of all broiler chickens raised in the United States. For the first time in the history of the species, 2 distinct, deliberately engineered lineages existed. A broiler chicken in the 1940s took around 12 weeks to reach market weight. A modern broiler reaches over 4 kilograms in roughly 6 to 7 weeks. Broiler breeding flocks actually have to be kept on restricted diets. If allowed to eat freely, they'd grow too large and too fast to physically mate or lay eggs at all. A red junglefowl hen lays maybe a dozen eggs a year. A commercial layer hen today routinely produces over 300, with top-performing flocks reportedly approaching 500 eggs across a 100-week laying cycle. A modern layer hen and a modern broiler chicken are now genetically about as different as 2 breeds of dog, separated not by thousands of years of evolution, but by less than a century of selection. Neither bird is actually built to survive well on its own. Sudden death syndrome, a direct consequence of muscle tissue outpacing skeletal and cardiovascular systems. Laying hens face a significantly elevated risk of osteoporosis from calcium redirected into eggshell production. A red junglefowl hen dropped into a forest forages and roosts in trees to avoid predators. A modern broiler chicken released into that same forest would struggle to walk far enough to forage. The global broiler and layer breeding industry is dominated by a small handful of multinational companies. A chicken breast bought in Brazil, Thailand, and the United States is likely to trace back to the same proprietary lines. The eggs came from a bird bred almost exclusively for laying volume. The chicken breast came from a bird bred almost exclusively for rapid growth and meat yield. Less than a century of deliberate human selection has pulled them apart genetically. The chicken of tomorrow wasn't a random accident. It was market demand and genetic science arriving at the same moment. Tonight, if you crack an egg into a pan, and later that week eat chicken for dinner, you're eating 2 different engineering projects, run in parallel for roughly 75 years, both starting from the same shy forest bird that used to lay a dozen eggs a year.